Hey there, everyone, and welcome to the first episode in December of the Water Trio Astrology podcast. We are coming at you with all the insights for the week starting Monday, December 2nd, which is also known as Jupiter and Capricorn Day. And because that's basically the most significant thing happening astrologically this week, the change of a 12-month-long trend, we're going to dedicate today's show to giving you all the insights about what to expect from the next year, which is basically 2020 with Jupiter in Capricorn. And as part of that, we've all been reflecting on the last time Jupiter was in Capricorn, which was pretty much 2008, and what that was like for each of us. And we actually realized that two of us for sure have had some really positive experiences last time Jupiter was in Capricorn. And so we're going to share a little bit about that today. And I think to kick us off, Leash, you're going to tell us a little bit more about what Jupiter in Capricorn was like for you last time.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Look, I'm just really excited, and I'm sure anyone with cardinal angles is really excited for Jupiter into Capricorn.
Yes, you guys have been doing it hard.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially those with Capricorn rising or Cancer rising, the Jupiter and Sag energy has been tucked away in those hidden houses in the 12th and the 6th. So now it's a time for you to really get some juice and really be able to kind of connect to that. But, the Libra rising, the Aries rising as well. But everyone, I guess we're hearing so much out there about, because Jupiter, traditionally, it's moving into the sign of its fall. Everybody's worried. They think it's going to be really bad. Nothing's going to be good out of this year. But it's not, it's still Jupiter. It's still a benefic. Well, that's what I feel like anyway. So for me, 2008, I literally doubled my pay. I changed jobs, and in that time, I moved into an organization that had a lot more respect for my skills and my experience, enabled me to grow. I also moved into project management and implemented some great financial grounding for the organization that I was working with through customer and investor management systems. And I doubled my salary in that time. So looking back, it was a very corporate position for me and quite an ambitious one. It was still a not-for-profit, and I was working with a lot of people from ex-private equity, ex-consulting, some of the brains in the financial services industry in Australia had come to work at this firm. So it was in terms of not-for-profits, it was the cream of the crop. So for me to not only get a job there, but to then double the salary of the job I'd left before was just unheard of. And I remember just getting the ferry home. I used to live in Manly and Sydney and work in the city. It was this is my dream life. I have a really great job that pays me well, where I'm respected. I get to live in one of the best places in the world, surf on my weekends. And it was just, in many ways, it felt like one of the best periods of my life.
You were living your best life.
I was. And I met my husband in that same year, under that same energy. So, it was really about I felt like it produced some really great foundations in my life for things to be able to grow from. So who knows what 2020 is going to bring for me or any of us, but I hope that hearing those little stories and sharing them can help bring people a little bit of settlement and a little bit of ease about this, because Jupiter's Jupiter. It brings its benefits, and it's very much about the house it's moving through, the area of your life that it's moving through, as to how you will be connecting to that. So what about you, Kel? Did you have some good stories you wanted to share?
I did. I realised that because I've been reflecting back on Jupiter and Sag last time, which was 2007, and how there's some real correlations between growth that I had in my business then and some of the growth that I'm having in my business this past year. So that's been lovely. But I also remembered getting to the end of 2007 and realizing that I had really grown and I needed to now do some restructuring and just sort of prioritize an order and structure. And I do think that's a huge part of what Jupiter in Capricorn is going to help us all do. I think Lacey said it's those foundations and that containment. And for me personally, 2008 was an absolute banner year. I spoke at my very first astrology conference that was in Sydney in January. which was, just such a big professional box to tick. And Capricorn is 11th house for me. So I guess I was doing a Jupiter type thing, doing some teaching in a 11th house type setting, a conference or, my community, the astrology community. I had also just finished my certification exams through the Australian certification program. And as part of that, I finished them in 2007, and randomly there was a special scholarship offered to someone who came, top in the country for 2007. Now, I actually came second in the country that year, but the person who came first sort of said, this scholarship was some money to go towards UAC, which was going to be in Denver in 2008. And I think it was about $1,000 or maybe $1,500. And when you're going from Australia to America, that actually doesn't even cover your airfare, but it does go a long way to reducing the cost, if it pays for most of your airfare. So I had sort of said, if I won this scholarship, I would go to this conference in Denver in May. And I didn't come first, but the woman who did said, even with that money, I still wouldn't be able to attend the conference. Please give it to, the next person in line, which was me. And so I think that's such a great event that I didn't come first, but I still won the prize, if that makes sense. So I did my first talk at a conference, got this like a scholarship, which didn't fully fund, but partly fund and made possible going to Denver in May of 2008. And after that, I feel a little bit, because I know I've talked about this story before, like the rest is history, because I met the man who became my husband then. And so I thought that was interesting, Leash, when we were talking about, I then went on to move countries, it was a very busy year for me that year. And of course there was, I had to, pack up. I was in a relationship in Sydney. So there was, definitely some of that backstory sort of drama, if you like. It wasn't all perfect, but, when I look back on it, 2008 was very much that turning point year, that everything that has happened since, opportunities to speak in the States and Canada, and all of that has happened because of the events of 2008. And I thought that was quite striking, Leash, that we both met our husbands then, if you like.
That's true.
And Cass, you had some pretty striking experiences with Jupiter and Capricorn as well. How would you describe it all?
Well, for me, Capricorn's my 8th house, so it tends to bring up the more the white elephants in the room.
So should we just pause on that for 2 seconds and say it is so dependent on the house that Jupiter is moving through? In some ways more than the sign. Like Leash and I, we had 10th and 11th houses, which are, they're the second and third most powerful houses in the chart. Leash, the 10th house is number 2, the first house is number 1, and 11th house in some systems would be considered number 3 in terms of its potency. But 8th house is one of the more ominous hidden. Or it's like it's not a happy part of the chart, shall we say?
No. And just to give you an example of the sheer unhappiness, Kelly moves to Canada and then Lishi, you went off to Israel.
Yes.
And I was left bereft in Sydney. I remember having this joke with you girls, I'd been bereft and I had all this anxiety, 8th house, all my friends are gone and our water trio and all the things we used to do together. It was never the same after 2008. Now we just do it online for everybody. So there was that component. But I guess on a more sort of literal 8th house level, and I guess, we were talking about this in the pre-show chat, and it sort of really depends on how you want to look at it. So, for those who don't know, I do have Gemini rising, so it puts Capricorn in the 8th. Very late in 2007, so technically Jupiter was still in Sag, but, 2008 was sort of, I guess, the reality of I'd purchased a house with my partner at the time. And we'd sort of, I think, met and bought a house within 12 months. It was very fast.
It was quite
very
quick.
Yeah, and I wasn't in a position to buy a house. It wasn't part of my goal, and it, just wasn't really on my radar then. But of course, lending criteria was a lot more flex back then, So we were able to do it. It wasn't like a big deal. And I remember when this sort of was first proposed to me, I kind of said, oh, do you think maybe we should like rent somewhere for 6 months or maybe travel overseas, do those things that can like be deal makers or breakers in a relationship. But no, he was hell bent. This is what he wanted. And, I kind of went with the flow with it. And so on paper, I did have the Jupiter in Capricorn, the achievement. I did something that, is a dream for many people. And, I guess if that relationship had have eventuated and worked out, I would look back on and go, yeah, it was wonderful. But because the relationship, it just ended up dissolving, I probably look at that period of time a little bit more negatively. So it really just depends on the angle you're looking at it from too. But also keep in mind, what's different too, like 2008 also had the ingress of Pluto, as well as Jupiter. And what we have this time, which I think is a little bit different, is a lot of Saturn South Node energy this year. So we've kind of been primed in a different way for Jupiter's entry. And I'm just going to speak on behalf of many Gemini risings because I've also seen this in client session and just other people that I know. And even for Sag risings to a certain extent as well, because it's still the second 8th house activation there. What this cycle has helped when you also think of 2008 having the Pluto piece, and now we've got the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction in, I think, is April, early April. I have to check the dates there. But it's also what I've learned personally in these transits is the energetic exchange we share with other people. And it may not necessarily be about money or joint finances or about debt. It can be the metaphysical exchange. It can be the emotional exchanges, the energy that you share with others. So for me this year, it's been more of a professional relationships I've had to re-clarify and figure out. And there's people I've worked with for many years on the back end that I've had to let go of. So there's been a little bit more clarity and awareness. I think in 2008, for many of us, we got kind of thrown in the deep end with Pluto at the same time. We hadn't had time to really process or churn those longer stories and those deeper meanings. So my hope, at least for myself, and for everybody too, is that, we've had time to deal with Capricorn, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent in your chart. And it's been a very barren place for many of us because of Saturn, because of the South Node. And now Jupiter coming in with its heat, with its moisture, with its exuberance. It may not necessarily be a buffet of crazy or a smorgasbord of plenty. It's definitely not going to be that. But what it does have the potential to do, and I've mentioned this on Twitter recently, is be a bit of a drought breaker in your Capricorn house. It is going to perhaps, grease the wheels just enough, not excessively, but enough to kind of maybe take the goodness of Jupiter and apply it to the lessons of Saturn. And whatever the Capricorn house for you, whether it's been good, whether it's been bad, or what have you, you can perhaps integrate those lessons or integrate that and go, whatever was good, I'm just going to do more of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn. If whatever wasn't good, I'm not doing that again. And that's been, I guess, my personal lesson, is being really aware of the energetic exchange that I've shared with others, or allowed myself to perhaps be a little bit more guided or influenced by others, whereas the Saturn South Node piece this year has been, no, you don't, Cass, so hopefully then the Jupiter will come along and help to bring the benefit of that over the long term. So, I guess with my case, it's, I did a really great achievement, but, buying a home, but I guess it just wasn't on my terms. And, I look back and I reflect on that and go, well, yeah, if I had my time again, I would do it differently. And in some respects, what is different to 2008 and 2020 is we are kind of doing it again, but differently, because we've been dealing with Capricorn so much this year.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, I saw your quote on Twitter about the drought breaker, and I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful way of describing it. And we've had, Venus came into Capricorn last week as well. So we've got the two planets that can really help. And it's nice to have a little bit of, moisture or connectivity before we get into the eclipses later this month. And we'll have plenty to talk with you about as we get closer to that very dramatic eclipse, which is December 26th, just, in such a calm time of the year. But that connectiveness, and I think, Cass, the point you're making around, we've been doing a lot of the clearing out, and so we're well placed to take advantage of whatever growth Jupiter might want to bring.
As long as you two don't move countries again on me, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Well, Kel never came back. I'm just up the road.
Yeah, you did come back. And
don't you move countries this time, Cass.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe you'll be the one leaving. But I think
maybe that's
really
what
good.
Jupiter in Aquarius
will
be for you.
The different point of view, like the growth for you and I, Leash. And I mean, I think that's a beautiful point. Like it was good to move forward in our lives in those ways, but it did mean we left behind not just Cass, but like all of our friendships and family, and for me, I did not come back. Leash, you always went with the intention of returning, I think. But yeah. And so, Cass, because you really spoke to some of the Jupiter 8th house themes about isolation or even loneliness and that introspective quality, which can be a precursor to things like anxiety or, just triggering a lot of worry or fear. And they are some of the things that do get activated with the 8th house. So the self-care of the mind becomes really important. If like Cass, you're a Gemini rising and this is going to be 8th house. But yeah, I agree completely. If that is the case for you, you've already been dealing with this because Saturn has been in your 8th house for 2 years. Because that is a very distinct difference between 2008 and now is the involvement of Saturn, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's that idea that, Saturn and the South Node have really cleared the table. They've just left the important pieces on there. So now there's the space to rebuild. Now there's the space to bring in what you really want to bring in. And I remember back in 2008, looking back on it now, I reached a whole new level of maturity, professionally and personally as well. And, I had some awesome, I traveled to Brazil, I had some awesome travel experiences as well. So even those Jupiterian themes still went on in that 10th house because it was that angular thing. But there is that sense of, I don't know, just a new level of maturity and wisdom with this. It's like leveling up. I think you use that Cass quite often. It's a new way of leveling up for this and a new way of us climbing a ladder. It will take time and patience and dedication, but the Jupiter piece gives us the confidence and the optimism and the faith that it will work out and that we'll get what we really aim for and hope for, but it's not going to be as buoyant and as flamboyant as Jupiter in Sagittarius has been, that's for sure. And I, for one, as a fire sign, a fire rising, I've been kind of dreading the Jupiter in Sagittarius triggers this year because they've just been a bit too much. So I'm really looking forward to just getting a bit more groundedness in, a bit more coolness in. And I love that drought breaker piece that you're saying, Cass, because I keep thinking of the thunderstorms here that when they roll through and we've had dryness for, 10, 12 days and the ground here is almost cracking because it needs so much moisture. And then suddenly just, the lightning of Jupiter, the thunder of Jupiter comes in and you can feel the moisture everywhere, that smell of ozone. It's just that real feeling of, okay, that's what this is bringing to all those really parched parts of our life that are desperate for that moisture. So I think it's such a beautiful analogy, Cass.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's a good one. And I guess...
And then
go, Cass, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I sort of, let that little reveal out on Twitter because somebody, I can't remember who it was, I'm sorry, but somebody mentioned something about it and I just wanted to put a positive spin on it. It's like, well, it can break the drought that's been the last 2 years. And then, of course, we need that literally, at least in Australia, at time of recording, bushfires everywhere and all that. So we're a very Capricorn country. So it's very much reflective of the astrology right now. So hopefully by the time this show goes live, our weather conditions are very different.
That would be
Yeah,
lovely.
fingers crossed.
And I guess that's making me think too about just with the cosmic weather or the astro weather for this week, you know, starting the week, Monday morning, Jupiter coming into Capricorn. I think Jupiter moves into Capricorn on Tuesday in Australia, but it's Monday in Canada and the States. There really is a mood shift coming through. You know, there's a sobering quality of like the party's over now. We've got to get back to work, or we've got to get down to business, or maybe we do need to do a bit of clear out or, you know, tidying up, because Sagittarius, Jupiter and Sag is so broad, and there is a scattering quality, the wide ranging, you know, which can be great mentally, but it can also be a bit distracted or a bit unfocused. And I think this first week of Jupiter in Capricorn is going to have a lot to do with sort of that sobering, grounding, getting a bit of a reality check. You know, when you wake up after the party, you're like, oh my God, this place is a mess. It's going to take me. You think, oh, we'll clean it in the morning, like when you go to bed and you've had your drinks, and you're like, it'll be easy. And then you wake up the next day, you've got the headache, and you can't even get to the coffee machine or the tea kettle because there's like a mess. And so I think this week could be a little bit of that kind of, oh, wow, this is what I now need to kind of handle. And just kind of, it's like roll your sleeves up and just get in and get started. And that's one of the gifts, I think, of Capricorn being a cardinal sign is, right, we better get on this. And we don't sort of have time to delay.
Yeah, because even that Tuesday here in Australia, we've got, you know, Venus conjunct the South Node, and also Mercury coming and sextiling Pluto too, all within less than 12 hours after Jupiter moves into Capricorn. So that whole Capricorn story is going to be right there in our face. You know, going to be trying to scrub red wine stains out of the carpet and, you know, work out how to get that pair of underpants off the fan. You know?
I don't know what happens to your parties, Leisha, though. I'm really teasing.
You can use white wine or champagne to remove red wine.
I didn't know that. I knew soda water, but I did not know the champagne and white. But who has champagne left over after a party?
That's if you want to waste it.
Capricorn will. Capricorn will.
That's true. I mean, something you said there, Leisha, I'm not quite sure how I got to where I went from what you said, but it made me think of the money thing, because I do think, and maybe it was in one of our WhatsApp chats too, you know, with Jupiter and Sag, that idea of like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can afford this. And then Jupiter in Capricorn, whether it's like the credit card bill arriving or the reality of what you have agreed to financially. And then Saturn in Capricorn, like we might need to space these out, or, you know, because Capricorn is a frugal sign. It is cautious and it is conservative. And it doesn't want to spend everything today because it wants to keep some for tomorrow. Capricorn likes to have, you know, I've got my rainy day fund, for instance, and you know, based on your personality, you either maybe have that or you don't. But with Jupiter and Capricorn, we're all going to learn about, you know, the backup plan. And I think there is a bit of a shift in the way we'll all think about money with this coming in. And I do not know how the underpants on the chandelier got me to that, but...
We all party in our own ways, don't we,
That's
girls?
true, that's true. So I think that's probably... a lot
Well, I guess
this week.
I guess as well, the other thing, and now it's totally gone out of my head, but it was just what you were saying about the frugalness of this piece. It also makes me think so much has crumbled and changed in hierarchies globally. A lot of things have had to shift and a lot of movements had to happen. So it'll be interesting to see the growth that happens globally in those places where things were brought to their knees or kind of moved, space was forced within. So it's like, hopefully, fingers crossed, some beautiful seeds can be planted with this energy. And it's something that we can all think about too. I mean, I know here in Australia with those bushfires, a lot of people are calling for changes in policy around how we handle firefighters and also around how we handle, you know, potential climate change. So hopefully this can be that wake-up call, or that, you know, that rap at the door that you open to some great new ideas and some great new initiatives coming through. So, that's
that
my
long-term
fingers crossed.
strategy is Capricorn is all about that.
Yeah, and it's the hope for the future. I think, you know, it's a hopeful planet in a futuristic looking sign. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. So what do you girls have on this week? Anything you want to share with our listeners? I know it's first week of Madness Month is what I call December. Maybe not this year with Jupiter and Cap. Crickets.
Yeah, that's it. All or nothing. At the time of recording, because we are a little advanced in our organisation at the moment, I'm still kind of planning and plotting and scheming. Trying to fit in a little bit more teaching before we wind up for the year. So stay posted. You can sign up to my newsletter on my website or join my social medias to stay in the loop with what I might be announcing in the next week or two.
Excellent.
In real time.
So stay tuned for Cass.
Yeah.
And anything from you, Leash?
Yes, next week I'll be starting my Choosing Your Canyon course. So for those who want to be part of that, it'll be a 7-week course on kind of breaking old patterns and old habits and being able to move forward into 2020 with a new outlook. So yeah, hop on my website for the details for that.
Fantastic.
What about you, Kel?
Yeah, I don't have anything special happening this week. I'm just kind of in the consulting room doing readings, but I am getting ready for my January speaking tour, which is going to involve our event in Brisbane, presenting at the FAA conference, which is in Melbourne in January. I'm also doing a 1-day workshop in Sydney in January. And after I finish in Aussie land, hometown, I'm going to Palm Springs, which is sold out. But I do have a New York event that by the time you're listening will be live for sale on the website, and that'll be February 1st in New York, and the Sydney event is January 11th. So both of those events will be the same teaching program, because I figure there probably aren't many other people who will be in Sydney and then New York in that time frame. So it's basically 2020 year ahead planning with astrology. So if you're looking for some insight on that, you can pop over to the events page on my website, kellysastrology.com, and get all the details about Sydney and New York. And I have a feeling our Brisbane event, by the time this episode goes live, our Brisbane event will be sold out.
So if anyone wants to join the wait list, send us a message.
Yes.
We've literally got 2 tickets left going to air right now. So
yeah. And I know people say that as a marketing strategy, but we really do actually just have 2 tickets left. But we will keep a wait list because, of course, sometimes, people drop out at the last minute or what
things
have you.
change. Yeah.
So
and also you girls
me.
both have Jupiter in Capricorn webinars available for sale on your websites too, don't you?
We do.
After having so if anyone wants some extra juice about all of this, go to either Cass or Kel or both.
Thank you, Leash. Well, and I think I'll just give a shout out to all 3 of us. All 3 of us do teach astrology, and I think all of us, I don't know if you do, Leash, but I think you do have some classes on your website for sale. So if you are looking for training on beginner or intermediate or timing astrology or relationship astrology, whatever it happens to be, even if we're not teaching anything new in, the week ahead, we also always have our courses for sale as downloadable audio files on our websites.
Yep.
This is very business of us. Hey, Jupiter and Capricorn.
So Capricorn.
But on that note, we will probably wrap up for today and look forward to seeing everyone again next time. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to it. If you're on YouTube, look for the bell. If you're on your favorite podcast service, do subscribe. And if you do like the show, we would love a rating on iTunes or SoundCloud, or even leave a comment below if you're watching us on YouTube. All of that really helps other people find our personal brand of, I was going to say madness, but maybe it's magical. No, it's really magical and inspiring.
Magic and madness.
They can
crazy
help us,
beautiful.
Yeah, the Aussie astro spirit out into the world. So thanks everyone.
Totally.
Thanks gals, and we'll see everyone next time.
Happy Jupiter. Bye.
Take care.
See you later.
Bye.